I have allergies, so I have a chronic cough that's a delight on the radio.
I can top that anyway because I, yesterday, had a routine colonoscopy and endoscopy. So I feel like...
On the radio?
Not on the... If only we could do that. Although I don't think there's I don't think there's a lot you'd get. I mean, maybe you'd hear the doctor going, are those car keys? I don't know. What are those? But...
Remember, every now and then there's a news story. I haven't heard one in years, but there used to be news stories occasionally about doing some sort of where they put like a camera inside somebody and they found like earrings.
Yeah.
Sometimes more than one earring.
Yeah.
Like, okay, that's just a horrible idea. But like weird things, like there's a section of your stomach that puts the stuff that like there's no way you should digest this, and so it just stays inside you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what was it doing there in the first place?
Well, that's a very good question, and in the particular case, they never explained it.
Yeah. There was actually an Alan Sherman song. You're probably not old enough to remember Alan Sherman.
I love Alan Sherman.
Yeah. So he did.
He's Hello Mother, Hello Father.
Yeah, but he did a parody of C'est Si Bon that was Icy Bones. It was a guy looking at X-rays, and
I don't know that one.
And so he says, and in case you use pay telephones, there's $2 in change among your lovely bones. There's a lot of that kind of stuff. All right.
I like the one. Oh, I can't remember it with the names.
The names?
I can't think of the name of it. He's great. We have because I bought a CD of his because I wanted my kids to hear, Camp Granada, and then it turned out we got a big kick out of a bunch of other stuff on there.
Oh, there's brilliant stuff. By the way, I might as well ease into the interview here. I'm talking to Paula Poundstone. You probably you've heard the voice you already know. I mean, she's in the Comedy Hall of Fame. She's a regular panelist on NPR's Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me, and is the author of Paula Poundstone. There's Nothing in This Book That I Meant to Say. Most recently, she was the voice of Forget Her Paul in the film Inside Out. I'm going to be here all day listing credentials, but the main thing to know, she's at the Fox Theater at Foxwoods Casino on Friday, February 19th at 8 p.m., and you can buy tickets at the Foxwoods website, or we'll put a phone number up on the website for you to call, too, if you want those tickets. Get those tickets. So as long as we're talking about this, did you grow up at all as a comedy nerd? Like, I had Smothers Brothers and Jonathan Winters and Bob Newhart records. I had vinyl records and I would sit alone in my room listening to comedy over and over again. Were you that kid?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Yeah. Oh, heavens, yeah. And there were great comedy albums back then. When I left home, I stole every one of my parents' Bill Cosby albums. We had Smothers Brothers albums. We had Alice's Restaurant, Arlo Guthrie, and then later, let's see. I know I have a Jonathan Winters. Oh, and Lily's albums.
Yep.
With Ernestine Tomlin.
Right. They came a little later, but yeah.
Yeah, and there's a really great one called Modern Scream. Mm-hmm. And then one where she does Lud and Marie, which is, there's this teenager that lives with, I don't know if it's her parents or her grandparents, and they're Lud and Marie. And I truly laughed till I cried over that because they sounded so much like my parents.
Well, I think also if you're a comedy nerd in ways that the average person would not understand, like I had friends who would listen to Jonathan Winters' album once, but they wouldn't listen to it 100 times, kind of relishing every pause, every breath. I mean, Bill Cosby, who obviously is a somewhat discredited currency these days, but I mean those long monologues about the chicken heart and stuff like that, you really could listen to them if you were that kind of person a long time, picking up every little pause and grunt and intonation.
You know what? They were brilliant albums.
Yep.
They were brilliant albums. When I was I was a kind of a screwed up teenager, and I was in a residential program for screwed up teenagers, and all the other screwed up teenagers had we had these little dormitory style rooms, and we had posters of rock and rollers up on everybody's wall. I had Lily Tomlin at that time had just done the first Broadway show that she did, and she was on the cover of Time magazine, and I had taken the magazine and carefully cut out every picture of Lily in the articles and, using my ticky-tack stuff to put things on the wall. I had little Lily Tomlin images all over my wall. And also Gilda Radner was huge right then. And same thing. I had little, Gilda Radners. I had the Carol Burnett. She was at one point on the cover of the Saturday Evening Post. There's a very beautiful picture of her, actually. And I had that, on display in my room. I was the only kid that didn't have musicians on their wall. For me, it was all these really great comics. And actually, the other thing I did at that same time of life, I had just gotten turned on to Bob and Ray.
Oh, yeah.
The great radio comedy team. And they had just come out with a book soon before I went to this residential program. It was called Write If You Get Work.
Mm-hmm.
And it had their scripts in it.
Yeah.
And having heard them, not a lot, but a little bit at that point in my life, I knew how they said what they said. And so I used to read aloud to the other girls in my room from this book. They thought I was a genius. They thought, I was bringing this to this. They had no idea that, that there were these really brilliant guys that had already done this. And then when I get a little bit older, I sought out every Bob and Ray I could find. And my kids, too, are enormous Bob and Ray fans. They are just so damn funny.
I should tell you, first of all, that I owned that book, too. I believe it was called Ready If You Get Work and Hang By Your Thumbs.
Perhaps it was.
Yeah, well, I think that was their sign-off on their old radio show. One of them would say, Ready If You Get Work, and the other one would say, and Hang By Your Thumbs. It is my, well, I should say that we're recording this for future use a few days from now, and it's my unpleasant duty to tell you that Bob Elliott, at the age of 92, passed today. Somebody is just telling me that right now.
Oh, my gosh.
But
if he lived to 92, good for him.
Right. Good run.
And yeah, that is a good run. And I'll tell you something. I volunteer in a nursing home, and there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. Mm-hmm. And I have no idea how his end was, but we do not do end of life very well.
Mm-hmm.
For him to, better to make it to 92 than 105.
What do you do at the nursing home? Do you do material at the nursing home, or?
No, originally when I went, I thought, well, I will go read to people,
Yeah.
And I work in the activities room, and I always say to people, don't let that word activities fool you. It's like teaching in a one-room schoolhouse. The cognitive abilities are so wildly different that there really is no one thing that you could do with everyone. You couldn't read to them because there's only a handful of people that are going to be able to follow what you're reading. And some of them will sleep, and this will be insulting. I'll tell you the one thing. I've been there for about a year, a little over a year. The one thing that I brought to them that I feel very proud of is they all the people that are there in the activities room are in wheelchairs, and they are sitting around two different big round tables. And I had the idea to bring in a balloon and play the game where you just keep the balloon in the air.
Mm-hmm.
And this game, I wish I could, it would be illegal to photograph them because it's a medical facility and there's privacy issues, obviously. But I wish I could, not to blow anybody's cover, but just it is so funny and so much fun and so joyous. And a lot of them really get into it.
Mm.
It is as athletic as they become. I mean, some people that were staring lifelessly for almost the whole time I've known them come to life over the balloon game. And I wish I could make baseball cards of them and show them in their positions, and keep their stats, for how many balloons get by them and what's their strong, because they have different styles of hitting the balloon. It's very, very fun. But anyways, so...
no, I've been involved in parimutuel betting on those balloon games. I put $100 on Mrs. Elderberry to keep that balloon up in the air and lost.
Yeah, there's been scandal.
Yeah, no, there has.
There's been.
Attorney generals in a lot of states are now looking into that whole thing. So brace yourself for trouble, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, it's a good thing I'm not in any photographs there.
That's right. You could just deny until you said this on the radio. You could have denied you had anything to do with it.
Yeah, well, I'm a comic. I make stuff up.
That's right. So, I know that you've often in the past done, like going back into the early 90s, I saw you do political stuff on The Tonight Show. But, when I first started to hear you on Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me, initially it seemed to me as though perhaps you didn't read the New York Times cover to cover going into those shows. And then there's been this evolution. I know there's a lot of joking on the show about when Paula wins and all this kind of stuff. But have you become a more avid news consumer as a result of doing that show and realizing that you can be even funnier if you know more?
The things that trip one up on Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes it's just pressure.
Yeah.
Because
Tremendous
the lightning round can be intense, and
Right.
of course there's a lot on the line.
Right, exactly.
But the things that trip you up are really the news of the weird.
Mm-hmm.
So, what I often don't know about is, and now I have like a couple of stock answers because I figure, at least 50% of the time it's going to be the correct answer. Lemurs down their pants
Right.
is a big one that I use.
Yeah.
And that, it's hit or miss, but certainly it hits sometimes.
There's a whole lemur rights organization that does not find that stuff funny, by the way.
Trust me, NPR hears from them. They do. So, no, I began to pay attention to the news. Let me think. How old might I have been? I was probably about 23 years old, maybe. And I lived briefly, really for a few weeks one summer, with Timothy Leary.
What?
And
what?
Yeah. He was a very nice man, by the way, very nice man. I had kind of run out of a place to stay, and I was friends with he and his wife. And we were at a party one night, and I was helping do the dishes in the kitchen, and I was talking to the host of the party about, my travails, the fact that and Tim Leary's wife said, well, you could come stay with us. And it turned out later, I don't think she thought that was a great idea, but at the time she did. And I got to tell you, when I pulled up in my 65 Mustang with, everything I owned in it, and feeling pretty demoralized, that I didn't have a place to stay and that I was, relying on the kindness of others, I pull into the driveway and Tim Leary, in what was really characteristically a Tim Leary thing to do, he comes out to greet me. I get out of the car. He opens his arms and he says, "Welcome to one of your homes on the planet." It was such a kindness. It was a very nice man. So anyways, while I lived there, I was working clubs. So I would either be somewhere around the country working in a club, or I would be home at that time in Los Angeles. And, only for 1 or 2 nights a week. But on the nights that I was home, I would go to the Improv in Hollywood usually and, and hang out and maybe do, tell some jokes. And I kept a pretty late night schedule and was perhaps a little bit slothful as well. So, but in the evening, I generally took a nap, like around 5 o'clock or so. I probably was in bed. And Tim would come into the room and go, "The news is on." And I don't know how many times he had done this, and I would just sort of roll over. I'd say thank you and then roll over, and that was the end of it. And finally, one evening he did this, and I said, "Let me ask you, why do you do that?" And he said, "You mean you don't watch the news?" And I said, "No, I don't." And he just couldn't believe that. And I said, well, for me, Tim, at this point, because I've never really watched the news, it would be like coming in the middle of a movie. I said, I have no idea what's going on, and so nothing makes sense to me. And so he said, you come in and watch with us, and anytime you have a question, we will answer it. And this is before, you could tape things and stop and start them. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times one news story was rolling while they were filling me in on the last one. So it was a slow process. But that is how I was introduced to watching the news. And then the Iran-Contra scandal took place, and I was glued to the television over that, watching just the whole thing. And I had Iran-Contra scandal trading cards, which they would have a picture of a character that's involved on one side and then their stats on the back.
Yeah, I had the Ollie North rookie card was really worth a lot of money.
They had a potted plant.
That's a potted plant, yeah.
Yeah. So in this way, I became involved. So by the time I got to Wait, Don't Tell Me, no, I'm not an expert on the news ever, but I was an avid NewsHour watcher, and I certainly listened to Morning Edition on the mornings that I could. But a lot of times, it wasn't the big news. It wasn't the real news that. Plus, let me just say this, and maybe this is sour grapes. The others cheat.
I see another scandal. First, it was the balloons in the nursing homes. Now we're about to hear the Wait, Don't Tell Me cheating scandals.
Well, no one ever talks about the steroids.
Yeah.
But, take one look at Mo Rocca.
Right.
You see it.
Yeah, he's a little like Ralph Fiennes in Quiz Show. You feel as though there's something else going on there, too.
Yeah, and the doping and the pumping up. No. It's all over the guy.
No, there's going to be congressional hearings. I've heard about that. You're listening to an interview I recorded recently with Paula Poundstone. It was supposed to be a 20-minute segment, but it sprawled so marvelously that we made it a whole show. Keep listening when we come back.
My mom was very young when she had kids. I know when I was born, she was 3. You'll never know the embarrassment of being dropped off at school in the Barbie dream car. I don't necessarily want to blame my mom, but I do, in fact, talk to a shrink every day. I'll tell you something about talking to a shrink, too. You really can't pay someone to take an interest. There's nothing worse than realizing that piece of paper your shrink is writing on is a crossword puzzle. It was a dead giveaway. I told her something about my mom. She said, And who played 99 on Get Smart? I said, well, Barbara Feldon, why? And how do you feel about that? So I guess I'm kind of pissed. I'd always wanted Karen Valentine to have that role.
Can we go back to Timothy Leary's house for just 1 second?
Yeah.
Maybe not physically, but was there ever a night where you sort of said, wow, this spaghetti sauce is really great. What's in it?
No, I don't think they fed me anyways. I think I was on my own with that. I'll tell you, they were older than me, and I forget how much older than me, but probably, if I was 23, it was probably a good, solid 40 years, I would think. He's a gray-haired older guy. He kept himself in real good physical shape, and he had a very, very happy, youthful face, but he was an older guy. And, I would come in at night trying to be respectful that I was in, somebody else's home and not make a lot of noise, and I would sort of tiptoe in as quietly as I could. And sometimes while, sitting, maybe having a drink in the kitchen, I would hear their car pull in after me. They had a lot more, they never behaved like elderly people. They had a lot more stamina than did I.
So this is at a time when you were a young comedian, right? And so this was a time of great duress, right? You had, it's funny because we just got through doing a show in which there was a whole series of IHOP jokes that were made. But did you work at IHOP?
I did not at that point in my life. I worked at IHOP when I was 18 years old.
Yeah.
I had gone to Orlando, Florida, because I wanted to be a bear in the Disney World's parade. And I got down there.
You got to have a dream, right?
I did have. You know what's really funny is, okay, so IHOP, Disney did not hire me, needless to say. First of all, I didn't have a car or a place to live when I went to apply for a job there. I was so driven in my dream that it never occurred to me to have those things in place first. I went straight from the Greyhound bus station to Disney. Mm-hmm. And the guy doing the interviewing, the like HR guy, was appalled. And it's funny, when I went to fill out the application, it said address, and I think I wrote Massachusetts because that was the last address I had.
Right.
And he just couldn't figure that out. And I had no idea, coming from Massachusetts, which is a small state and things tend to be clustered in one area. You know, Orlando was very, very, very spread out. And so how I would get around just never even occurred to me. I thought, well, I'll walk, or, because I walked everywhere back then, and it turned out, so I had to hitchhike. And it's illegal to hitchhike on Disney property, or it was back then. And the driveway was 3 miles long, or something like that, or maybe it was a mile long. I can't remember anymore. It was long. So I would get on the tram that takes you out to the parking lot, and begin. I would just sort of find somebody to look friendly and go over and start talking to them, and then I would sort of have a little chat for a while. And by the time we got to the parking lot, I would have told them that I had no car and no way to get anywhere. Mm-hmm. And generally speaking, these people would drive me at least out to the highway, where I would be with my suitcases. I didn't have a lot of, frontal lobe at 18. No one does, by the way. But I was particularly had a big deficit in that area in my planning. So I ended up getting a job at the International House of Pancakes on the Orange Blossom Trail, 11 at night to 7 in the morning. And it was, it rivals for the worst job I've ever had. It was pretty much agony. I actually rescued a man one night. I pulled a man's face out of his over-easy eggs. And he, had I not been there, he might have drowned.
In his eggs? In
his eggs. Because, the over-easies, you get the...
There's a viscosity. There's a viscosity, right?
Yeah, you get the liquefied yolk. And that, it doesn't have to be deep to drown.
There's been tests. They've done studies.
They've done studies. Trust me. They better... Wait, don't tell me.
That's right. They use lemurs, actually, to do those studies, and they just put their faces right into the eggs. The Lemur Rights Society that's the kind of thing that really gets them upset, too.
They have a letter writing campaign right now.
Don't you find that's really, we've had a conversation on the air a couple of days ago about this, but that really, there are now groups capable of being offended by almost anything, by any joke that you might tell, the most harmless, innocuous joke. I made a joke about shellfish allergies, and I heard from the shellfish allergy something.
Wow.
Do you get that? Do you find they're sort of, you don't, for the most part, you're not a shock comic, but do you find that even so, there are people who get restless or upset about something?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. I think that the sort of training ground for that, the sort of, pipeline that infuses that, into our society is social networking. Mm-hmm. People who write, sort of, I know, both mean things and sort of lack of tolerance kinds of things. It's the same people that yell stuff out their car window, I think. There's this anonymity, obviously, to, being online. And, there are just so many people that I think sit around waiting, hoping breathlessly to be, quote unquote, offended, so that, and this is the part that really strikes me as odd, so that they can retweet it and say, look how offensive this is.
Right.
Now, if I find a gross substance that smells really bad and looks disgusting somewhere outside of my house, I don't bring it inside to show people. So this idea that there's something, and by the way, I have certainly been guilty of, fortunately I don't think it's happened often, but I can think of a joke that I wrote on Twitter one time that I just really didn't think through very well. And it wasn't a joke about what people got upset about. They didn't sort of get the point of the joke. But if I had thought it through a little bit more carefully, I wouldn't have said something that could even be interpreted that way. And you know, people were all over it so fast. And it was like nothing that I had ever done or said in my life could counterbalance for these people, you know, the horrors of this one comment. And it just seems not right to me somehow, you know. But it really is people laying in wait to catch you saying something that you regret saying. It's really an unwanted, what's it called, like a byproduct of social networking.
Well, I also think if you try to make it up to them, you're wrecking their fun, too. If you try to make it up to them or say something nice or mollify them, you're kind of wrecking their fun. I mean, they really want to be angry and miserable about this.
Yeah, I do think that's true.
So you're better off doubling down on it, you know?
I tend not to be offended by most things, and I tend to find lots and lots of things funny because it's just so much fun to laugh. It's so mentally healthy to laugh. It's so much fun to find things funny, and the other way around is just not much fun. And so I tend to be pretty wide open to that which amuses me. I remember when my kids were in like elementary school, and they would send out the rules. And one year, Allie was in Ms. Talbot's 4th, 5th grade class, and the rules came home that year, and they tried to sort of tweak them each year as if we just as parents weren't getting it somehow. So on this particular year, one of the rules was that your child may not use offensive language. And so I wrote to Miss Talbot on the side of the rules. I said, you know, Miss Talbot, what offends you probably doesn't offend me, and what offends me likely doesn't offend you. I said, if you will give me the list, I will gladly go over it with my daughter. And she wrote back in this very school-marmish hand, she wrote, we only use school words, which I defy anybody to tell me what that means. I assume what it means is that if there's a couple of kids that are getting a little out of control on the playground and one guy swings his backpack and clips the other guy in the back of the head with it, that the guy gets hit is supposed to say, protractor.
Right. Good. Aristotle.
Yeah, school words.
I think a good rule of thumb, one of your colleagues at Wait, Don't Tell Me, Roy Blunt, once wrote that his daughter said, I try never to say fart unless I've heard someone else say it first. You know, in any milieu, that's a pretty good, that's a good guideline.
I think that's brilliant.
This is an interview I recorded recently with Paula Poundstone. We thought it was going to be a short conversation. It turned into a whole show. Hear the rest of it when we come back.
I got in a fight the other day over a parking space at the Museum of Tolerance. We're not that. We, for example, my family were atheists. And they're not particularly tolerant of that where I live, I must say. And, really, the good thing about being an atheist is that we have no mandate to convert anybody. So you're not going to wake up on a Saturday morning with me at your door. I never go like, ding dong, just stop by to tell you there is no word. Just brought along this little blank book I was hoping you'd take a look at. Even my kids get upset with me because we don't celebrate Easter. I say to them, first of all, it's not a part of our religious beliefs. And second of all, you don't like eggs. And thirdly, you don't look for anything. Happy Easter, go find your socks.
I know that Paula is famous for loving junk food, but Pizza Hut stuffed garlic knots are the sign of a dying civilization. Today's show was produced by Betsy Kaplan and me, Kyone Wolf. Greg Hill tweets for us at WNPR Colin. Our interns are Tiana Duquette and Benjamin Esty. The part of Bill Curry was played by Robert Lowell. For show pages, photos, articles, and videos of the Here and Now staff dropping Zantac with Timothy Leary, go to our website, wnpr.org/Colin. On tomorrow's show, the nose buzzes about the debut of Samantha Bee. And now, back to Colin.
Do you find that, I remember seeing you as a comic before you had kids, and there was a very funny thing you do. You may not remember it. You did. You was very. I think it was about being at a skiing place or something, and you were looking at people with their kids, and the kids were like crying because they couldn't have a candy bar out of the candy machine, and you because you didn't have kids, you said, I think maybe I'll get 2 candy bars. And
I totally forgot that. Yeah, I did used to say that.
And then I think I'll take them up to my room and eat them and watch television as late as I want to and go to bed whenever I feel like it. Okay, so you're laughing at that now. I'm just sort of wondering, I mean, I'm guessing that piece of comedy looks a little bit different to you now that you've been on the other side of that.
Yes and no. I honestly had totally forgotten doing that. I can even remember how I would wiggle my fingers when I said the word two. Mm-hmm. Two. I used to do a joke where I said that I couldn't stand babies on the airplane. And I said, they know now what causes pregnancy. And so if people are planning a trip, just don't have sex. And I would say that I hated babies on planes so much that if they offered 2 different kind of flights, like babies and no babies flights, that I would, even if I had to stay in town a day or 2 more, I would wait around for the no babies flight. Yeah, the tide turned on that. It's so funny because it did used to annoy the hell out of me, babies on planes. It did. Mm-hmm. I wasn't kidding when I said it. But you know what? My children can't understand this at all. So maybe it's just something that happens at a certain age. I love babies so much that I have had times on an airplane where there was a baby screaming and I switched my seat so that I could sit near the screaming baby. Mm-hmm. Sometimes to offer to help the mom a little bit because been there, done that. And sometimes because I know that the person that is sitting near the screaming baby probably can't put up with it the way I can.
I just want to say Gandhi wouldn't have done that. So that's impressive.
I was on a flight one time. I forget from where to where. But there was a woman, I believe she was African, and she had a kid. It wasn't an infant. It was more like a toddler, but little, under 2, I would say. And the poor kid was just, she didn't have anything for the kid to do, and the kid was just having a fit. And she didn't speak English, or she spoke very, very little. But I was able, sort of with gesturing and the way that people without a common language do, to ask if she would like my help. And she sort of, shook her head. And I moved over. And I think for the kid, just the idea that I was talking to him was so entertaining to him in a way. I mean, he was just sort of stunned by my presence. Mm. And I don't know, we just did stuff. I think I took out a piece of paper and we drew and I talked to him even though I knew he had no idea what he was. When people went to leave the flight, I swear this is true, it was a small plane, but as people went to leave the flight, including the flight attendants, they thanked me on the way off the plane, because I think in the beginning it had seemed like, boy, this is going to be a hellacious trip. And it is one of my fondest travel memories. My kids are like so embarrassed, by the way, whenever I gravitate to a baby. The other day I was with my son and my daughter in a store, and my daughter pointed out to me that there was a baby down the aisle somewhere. So I walked down the aisle to talk to the mom and the baby. And then later, my son went up to her and said, well, where's Mom? And she goes, I bet she's still talking to that baby. And indeed I was. I don't know. I miss my children being babies so much. Maybe it's because, they don't answer you back. Right. I don't know. Maybe it's that. I'm not really exactly sure. I just find babies absolutely fascinating.
You're still opposed to letting the babies fly the planes, right?
Yeah, I've changed my mind on that. But it is so funny because I really did feel this very, very strongly in the past. I can remember just really like loathing the idea of even a kid on a plane. And now I feel, the polar opposite. I'll tell you what I can't stand to see. Mm-hmm. I can't stand to see parents hand a kid, an iPad or a smartphone. Mm-hmm. It breaks my heart.
Well, you've actually, that's something you've kind of been involved in a little bit and been a little bit vocal about, even up to, and talk about something you probably didn't think, back in the child-free years you would be thinking about. Have you gotten concerned about the way math is taught?
Any computer, let's do this online academic endeavor, I think is wrong at this point. I didn't always think that. When schools first started, moving in that direction, I was all for it. But see, my kids, particularly my son, is just the right age to have sort of gone through that experiment, and disaster. And it turns out, we brought a computer into our home because words like educational kept being used surrounding it. And it turns out that those claims are not true. Screen use is overstimulating to the developing frontal lobe and causes far more problems than it could ever solve. And people always like to argue. They'll tell me, well, yes, but it's helpful for this. But yes, it's good for this. Well, some of those claims may well be true, but they are hardly offset by the dangers. And you can see it. And then people will say to me, well, what studies? What cite your sources there? You know what? My source, although there are studies and many that back up what I'm saying, but my source is my eyes. Mm-hmm. I look around and I see what I see, and it's not healthy. I live in a cesspool of guilt over this because I did bring the computer into my home. I put my son in front of a computer when he was 3 because I didn't know any better, and it's done real damage to him. He has very, very severe electronics addiction, which is a real thing, and people need to recognize it. But, when I talk to people about this, and obviously I'm telling them something really personal, and, the only reason I share it is because people need to know the downside of this. But oftentimes people will say, yes, but the video games are good for hand-eye coordination, which I just find a stunning comment after what I've said. First of all, unless you have a severely disabled child, there's not a dinner table in the country where a kid just randomly tines the side of his face with his fork to such a degree that one parent must turn to the other and say, I think it's time for World of Warcraft. We're behind in a lot of things. We're behind in math. We're behind in science. Hand-eye coordination, I don't think was a deficit for us.
No, and, paper airplanes are good for hand-eye coordination, too.
Right. There's a ton of other ways of...
Right.
And, by the way, the really, really, really shocking elephant in the room is the role that video gaming has played in the lives of so many of the shooters. Mm-hmm. No one ever talks about it. People sort of pretend that's not there, that's not happening. It is huge. I don't know. I also think for adults, we always talk about it like it's a problem with the kids. It's all of us. Right. I do it too. I don't game, but I find myself I check my email so often sometimes, and it's just a compulsion. If I check my mailbox that many times, my neighbors would do an intervention.
Well, yeah, I feel like sometimes I get up in the morning and I'll read the physical paper, which I have delivered, 2 papers. But it's like my eyeballs are actually hungering for something else. My eyeballs are going, no, this doesn't glow. This isn't. Yeah. We want to look at something that's bright and glows. Bring us to the computer.
They find that information taken in from a page is retained better than information taken in from the screen.
But radio best of all.
Yeah, it's a very good way.
Paula Poundstone will be at the Fox Theater in Foxwoods Casino on Friday, February 19th at 8 p.m. You can buy tickets at the Foxwoods website, or you can call them, 860-312-5050. You'll never remember that phone number. But Paula Poundstone, it's been great to talk to you. It's like I'm like a baby. I was crying before you came on the air, and something about you just calmed me right down.
Wow, that's nice to hear.
I feel like I'm ready for my nap now.
I hope I've helped with the development of your frontal lobe.
Yeah, I think you have. Although it might be a little bit late to do development. I think it's more like the beach is eroding and we're trying to salvage as much of it as possible at this point.
I don't know. There's stuff about the brain that they still don't know. I hold out a hope that you can continue to develop.
I'm going to go out in the newsroom right now and practice keeping a balloon in the air. But thanks for talking to me.
Thanks so much. It was fun.